Documents show that the coffin used to transport the slain body of President John F. Kennedy from Dallas was later thrown away at sea so that it would not become a public curiosity. The documents reveal that it was the president's brother, Robert, who wanted it dropped into the ocean. NBC News correspondent Pete Williams has details.
The long-lost documents released Tuesday reveal it was Robert Kennedy who wanted to dispose of the bronze coffin that carried President Kennedy's body to Washington after the assassination in Dallas. The president was actually buried in a mahogany coffin considered more suitable. The records show that a Dallas funeral director who provided the bronze casket wanted it back to put it on display. Government officials say he wanted to store it in his funeral parlor with a proper exhibit because he thought it would be good for his business. A Washington funeral director who helped with the Kennedy burial remembers the Dallas man's keen interest in the bronze casket.
He wanted his almost words to the effect, "I want my casket back and you know where it is."
The government eventually bought it, storing it in the National Archives until early 1966 when Robert Kennedy asked that it be disposed of at sea. Nicholas Katzenbach, who was then Attorney General, approved of the plan, saying he was unable to conceive of any manner in which the casket could have any value as evidence of the assassination. And Katzenbach said public display of the casket would be extremely offensive, a prospect that couldn't be ruled out if the casket was kept. So, on February 16, 1966, the bronze coffin was driven to Andrews Air Force Base outside Washington, flown in a military cargo plane about 160 miles off the Atlantic seaboard, and dropped into the ocean, where it now rests under roughly 9,000 feet of water. Pete Williams, NBC News, Washington.
Gerald Posner is the author of Case Closed, an investigation of the Kennedy assassination. Gerald Posner, welcome back to Today. Nice to see you.
Katie, good to see you.
It sounds as if Robert Kennedy's fears were founded, that this casket might have been exploited by either the owner of the funeral parlor or whatever, or by someone else if they got their hands on it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. You know, we've been finding out the last few years that Bobby Kennedy was worried about these gruesome displays that could be made of JFK's brain or possibly the casket or of other things. We never knew why he had these fears, and now these government documents just released yesterday show us not only did the funeral director in Dallas want to put it on a public display, but somebody else was offering $100,000 to buy it, and another fellow wanted to put it on a flatbed truck and take it around the country for people to come in and see it. So it was going to be a rather terrible turn of events for Bobby and the family.
Why this specific place in the Atlantic Ocean? Why was this selected?
They selected it because, first of all, it's an old dumping ground for arms. The military knew about it. It's right at the edge of the continental shelf, so they decided that nobody in a fishing trawler could go by and pick it up. It's 9,000 feet down, and they hoped it's far enough away to keep souvenir hunters, who now know the location because it was just released yesterday on a map, from going out there and trying to retrieve it.
So now do you think people will head there and try to get a hold of this?
That's the unfortunate part. I mean, Bobby's fear then was the casket could be on public display. I'm sure you're going to have some group put together an expedition to go out there and paddle out and try to actually retrieve this. You'll have it on pay-per-view, or, you know, you'll have Oliver Stone renting a yacht and trying to get out there and actually retrieve it. Somebody will make an attempt.
In fact, conspiracy theorists might have a field day with this. What might they say about the way that the coffin was disposed of?
Oh, it will be a field day for them because it looks terrible on its surface. You have the coffin in which the president was originally placed, and even though he was only in it until he gets to Bethesda and they do the autopsy, it's then taken by a military plane and jettisoned. It's filled with sandbags and holes are drilled in it so it will sink, and they parachute it out over the ocean. It's straight out of X-Files with that. But I can tell you, Katie, that when it comes to the conspiracy theorists, if the coffin was here today, right between us, and they examined it, and it didn't show a thing, as it wouldn't, they would say, well, it's probably been swapped. Or maybe they modified it some way. So there's no answering it. But the fact that it disappeared and the military got rid of it will let them say, something must be hidden here. It looks terrible.
Do you agree with the Attorney General at the time who said there was no reason to keep it? There was no evidence that could be obtained from this?
I agree there was no evidence that could be obtained from it, but I disagree with getting rid of it. I think that the Kennedy family, and Bobby in particular, I understand why he wanted to get rid of it, but I also think it was possible to keep it at the National Archives under lock and key and make sure it never ended up on public display. This was the assassination of the president, and all of these things that the Kennedy family did in the years after the case to try to hide things like the brain or the casket or other things, have set the groundwork for a lot of conspiracy speculation. I wish they had not done that.
And you mentioned the brain. That was for a while in the National Archives, is that right?
It was in the National Archives until Bobby took it back, and then it appears buried it together with Jack, his brother, when Jack was reinterred in another grave at Arlington in early 1967, put the brain into the ground with him. And so that brain, evidence in a criminal case, disappeared together as well.
All right. Gerald Posner, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks. Nice to see you.
It's 8:21. We'll be back with more of Today right after these messages.